Hello friends, welcome to the course Foundations of R Software. And you can recall that in the last couple of lectures we have discussed a couple of topics about the control structures. And the control structures are essentially used to control the program or the structure of the program. So now continuing on the same lines, in this lecture today we are going to begin with a new topic of control structure, that is about loops. So the first question comes that why these loops are needed. Loops are needed whenever you want to repeat the same command more than once. For example, let me try to take a simple example to explain you. Suppose in a class, the mark sheet and the grade sheet are to be prepared for all the students, and suppose there are 100 students. And suppose there are only two classifications, that if a student has secured more than 50% marks, then the student is going to be graded as pass, otherwise fail. So now that is the rule. So that command you can write very easily, but now this command has to be repeated over all the students, all the 100 students. So now first option is that you try to take one student at a time and you try to execute this program and you try to record the outcome and you create the grade sheets. Second option is that in case if I can have an option that I supply the list of all the students and this program is going to be executed repeatedly for all the students. And finally, the grade sheets of all the students will be prepared automatically. So under these types of situations, we try to use the concept of loops. Now there are different types of loops. So in this lecture we are going to talk about the for loop, and in the next lecture we are going to talk about the while and repeat loop. So let us begin our lecture and we try to consider some examples to understand how you can execute the concept of for loop in the R software. So let us begin our lecture. So you know that we had started a discussion on the control structures in R, and we already have done the control statements, conditional executions like as if else, if, etc. Then we had considered the some functions, and we had considered the function switch and which, and now we are coming to the concepts of loops. So why these loops are needed? These loops are needed to repeat the commands, right? That in case if you want to execute a particular command or a set of commands for more than once, then you try to use the concept of loop. And there are three popular loops which are popularly called as for loop, while loop, repeat loop. So in this lecture we are going to talk about the for loop, and all the three loops, they are used in different types of conditions, that depending on the need and requirement you can choose whichever loop you want to use. So I will try to explain you their conditions under which they are going to be used. First let us try to understand about the for loop. So the for loop is used when the number of repetitions is known in advance. That means you know that for how many times you want to repeat the loop. For example, we just considered the example where we know that there are 100 students and we want to prepare their grade sheets. So whatever is my program, whatever are the commands, they have to be repeated 100 times. So under such a cases, we try to use the concept of for loop, and the flow chart of this for loop is like this, that we start and we enter into the loop. So whenever you are trying to start the loop, you have to first initialize it. Means initial is something like setting the counter at 0. from, or the setting the counter at a point from where you want to measure. For example, suppose I want to know that I am driving my car and I want to know that how many kilometers I am going to drive today. So, what will I do? At the time of start, there is a counter, and there I will make the reading to be 0000, and after I have driven the car for the whole day, then I can see that how many kilometers I have driven. So, this process of making the counter to be at initial value 0000, this is called as initialization. So, you know that how the counter is going to work, right, because in the loops also you have to define a counter which is going to control the number of times the loop is going to be repeated. So, now we enter into the loop, and yes, certainly there will be some conditions which we have to check, and based on the outcome of this condition, whether the conditions are true or false, we are going to execute the conditions. So, in case if the conditions are true, then whatever are the instructions, whatever are the commands, they are going to be executed, and after that, and then in order to inform the R software that it has to go further, the counter will be updated here, and this information will be supplied to the condition, and once again, in case if the condition is going to be true, then once again this process will start and the instructions will be executed, and this process will continue. As soon as the condition become false, then the program will stop. So, this is how the for loop works. So, it is just like this, that the program will start and the program has to be repeated for say 100 students. So, the program will come here and the conditions are going to be checked. In case if the condition is true, then whatever is the grade of the student, that is going to be reported. Then after that, the control will come to the next student by updating the counter, and the next student records will be taken as input, and then the condition for the pass or fail is going to be checked, and then based on that the instructions are going to be executed, and this counter will be updated till we reach to the last student, that is the 100th student, and as soon as the counter comes to the 101, the condition will become false and then the process will stop. So, this is the way the for loop works. So, now the question is that how are you going to work with the for loop in the R software? So, the syntax for the for loop is that first you try to write for, and then you have to give here a name inside the parenthesis in the form of a vector, and yeah, it means you have to be careful that I am writing here which contained in the vector. So, this vector is corresponding to this vector, right. So, we have to give here a counter variable. So, that is going to control the values in this vector, and after that whatever commands we want to execute, they are going to be mentioned just after that inside the curly brackets, and then the loop will start, and these commands are going to be executed for all the values which are given in the counter variable, whose information to repeat is stored in the vector. So, this is how actually for loop works. Do not worry, as soon as I take some examples, this concept will become very clear. So, why not to take an example and try to understand what it does? Suppose I want to print the numbers 1 to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So, in order to do it, I try to use the concept of loop, and I write down my for loop as follows. For, now this is here the counter variable. Counter variable means this is going to control the counter of the number of times the functions are going to be repeated. So, I have to define here a variable, this is the counter variable I, which is going to inform the for loop that how many times or for what values this for loop has to be repeated, right. So then I write here, after informing the counter variable, I try to write down here in, and then I try to write down here the values for which I want to repeat the function or the commands. Here, because I wanted to repeat these values for the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, I have written here as a 1:5, otherwise you can give here any value, right, that can be also in the form of data vector. And then I give the instructions inside the curly bracket that print I square. What is this I? This is coming from here, right. So, in case if you try to see what will happen, as soon as you try to execute it on the R software, the control will come to here I, and it will try to choose the first value. So, I is going to take here 5 values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, first the value of I equal to 1 is going to be considered, and then this value of I will be coming inside the curly brackets, and all the instructions to be executed are read. Then it is here print 1 square. So, this will print here 1. Now, after this, the second value or the next value in the counter, which is I equal to 2, this is going to be considered, and it will try to execute the commands inside the curly bracket as print 2 square, and this will give you a result 4. And similarly, the next value in the I, which is here I equal to 3, that is going to be considered, and then the control will come inside the curly bracket, and whatever are my instructions like as to print 3 square will be executed, and we will get here the value 9. Similarly, it will come to I equal to 4, and it will print here 4 square, which is here 16, and then it will come to here I equal to 5, and then it will print here 5 square 25, and now after this there are no more values in this vector, in this set of values. So, now it will go to I equal to 6, but this is not available. So, the program will stop here, and this is how these things work, and you can see here, this is here the outcome which you are going to get when you are trying to execute it on the R console, right. So, before going further, let me try to show you this command, that how it works in the R software inside the R console. So, now I try to use this command on the R console, and you can see here that as soon as you use this command and press enter, it will give you this outcome. Now, at the same place I will try to show you that in case if you try to replace this 1 to 5 values by some other values which are not really in the sequence. So, you can see here what I try to do, that instead of 1:5, I try to give here a data vector, say 2, 4, 6, 7, right. And if you try to see here what will happen, what do you expect here, that the control will come to here 2 and it will print here 2 square, then the control will come to 4, it will print here 4 square, the control will come to 6 and then it will print here 6 square, and control will come to 7 and it will print 7 square, which is 49. So, let me enter and try to see what happens. So, you can see here these are the 2 square, 4 square, 6 square and 7 square, these values are obtained. So, you can give here any value in this data vector, and those values are going to be considered in the same order in which they have been mentioned inside the data vector, right. So, yeah, this is the same command which I have shown you on the R console. So, I have taken here this data vector here 2, 4, 6, 7 in place of here 1 to 5, and then it is printing here these values, right. So, the same thing is happening, that first I is coming to the first value, which is I equal to 2, and then it is printing 2 square. Then after this, the next value I equal to 4 is considered, and then it is printing here 4 square. Then the third value is considered I equal to 6, and 6 square is printed, and finally, the last value I equal to 7 is considered and 7 square is printed, right. Okay. So, now let me try to give you here one more example. Yeah, one point where I would request you to be a little bit considerate. is that here I am going to use here a concept of function, right. Although I agree that we have not considered this concept up to now, we have not understood, or I will say that I have not explained you up to now, but that is a topic which is coming just after the topics of loops. So, I would request you that you please try to take this example, and after you understand the function, you can come back here, and then I am sure that you will understand it more easily. But on the other hand, this concept is very simple, and my objective here is to show you the application of the loop. And as I said in the beginning itself, that the way we are going to learn this software is that we are trying to take the commands, and there is a good possibility that some of the commands which I am using here may be considered in the forthcoming lectures, but then this is how we have to understand each other and we have to help each other, right. So, I request you that you please help me and try to understand this example. My objective is not at all to explain you the concept of function here, but I will try my best to give you briefly, and my main objective is that how this for loop is going to work. So, in this example, my objective is that I have got a set of values here which are contained in the data vector x 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and 12, and I want to check that in this data vector, in case any of the value is it is divided by 2, that half of the values contained in the data vector, is it greater than 1.5? For example, in case if I say here 6 divided by 2, it is 3, it is greater than 1.5? Yes. So, I want to count such values when they are divided by 2, they yield a result or a value which is more than 1.5. So, in order to execute it, now you can see here that I have to repeat syntax and commands for the number of times the values are in this data vector, and for all the values which are contained inside the data vector. So, for that I write here a function. So, function is only a program, means in the common language I can say. So, it is written here as a function, and then inside the parenthesis you try to write down all the input variable, or in case if there are more than one input variable, that you can also write inside this parenthesis. Then after that, whatever commands you want to execute, they have to be given inside this curly bracket. So, let me try to write down this curly bracket number here 1, so that you can understand it, right. So, whatever you want, this has to be written inside these two. So, now I try to give here my commands which I want to execute. So, what I want here, that all the values in the data vector x, they are to be divided by 2, and then they have to be checked whether this is greater than 3 or not, right. So, now for this I use here a loop, for loop. So, for the for loop means I want to count the values. So, for that I need to define here a counter variable. So, I try to define here a counter variable as a count, COUNT, but you can choose here any name, actually whatever you want, right, and I initialize it at 0, because the counting will start from 0. In case if you want to start the counting from some other number, you can control it here without any problem. Now, write down my here loop for xval. So, this is my here counter variable. So, this variable is going to control the values inside the x data vector. So, I try to write down here xval and then in, and then my this data vector here x. Now, after this I try to enclose all the commands whatever I want to use inside this curly bracket. So, like this and here this. So, let me try to call it here curly bracket number 2, right, like here this. So, now my commands are extremely simple. I try to use here a conditional execution using if command. So, this if xval divided by 2 is greater than 3, then count will be replaced by count plus 1. So, now what will happen? This counter variable xval will try to pick up all the values from the data vector x, and it will try to use the counter variable count, and in case if this condition is true, then it will replace count is equal to count plus 1, otherwise it will remain as the same. And after this the program will stop here, and then finally the program will come out of this loop, and then it will try to print whatever is the value of the variable count, and then after this function will stop. And after that, in case if you want to execute this program, then you have to write down the name of the function EXCOUNT and within the parenthesis the input variable x, right, and it will give you here the value 3. How? Let us try to understand how this is working, right. So, in case if you try to see here, you are trying to say x val takes the value 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and 12. So, now the first value will be chosen, x val equal to 2. Now, 2 divided by 2 is greater than 3, the condition is false. So, this count will be taken as 0, because this is the initial value. Now, after this the next value in the x val, which is equal to here 4, that will be taken, and 4 divided by 2 will be considered. The answer is 2. Is it greater than 3? Answer is false, and once again the count will remain here as say 0. Now, after this the next value in the x val, which is here 6, x val is equal to 6 will be taken, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, 3 is greater than 3, this is false, and once again the count will assume the value 0. Now, after this the next value x val equal to 8 will be taken, 8 divided by 2 is greater than 3, answer is true, and then the count will be replaced by count plus 1. So, this count will become here 0 plus 1, that is 1. Now, after this the next value x val, which is equal to here 10, that will be taken, then the same operation will be done. 10 divided by 2, is it greater than 3? Yes, 5 is greater than 3. So, the condition is true. So, now after this the count will become here the count plus 1, 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. And now finally, what will happen? The last value in the x val, which is equal to here 12, that will be taken. 12 divided by 2 is greater than 3, this is true, and then the count will become count plus 1, which is here 2 plus 1 equal to here 3, what is given here. So, this is how this loop is going to work in this case, right. So, now similarly I try to take here one more example, and after that I will try to show you both these examples on the R console. Now, in this case what I want to show you is that we can have a loop inside a loop. Means there can be more than one loop in a function in a program, and those loops can be inside the loops, right. So, that is just like you try to write down here a for command, and then inside this for command you give here one more for command, and it is possible that within this for loop you try to give here one more loop, and so on. So, let me try to explain you with this example, right. So, suppose I try to take here two data vectors, one is here child and another here is sweet. So, in the data vector child there are three children, child 1, child 2 and child 3, and suppose for the sweet there are 3 sweets, sweet 1, sweet 2 and sweet 3, and I simply want to print the combination of the values in the two data vectors child and sweet, right. So, what I try to do here is like this. Suppose I want to print child 1 and sweet 1, child 2 with sweet 1 2, and up to here say here child 3 and sweet 3 like this. So, now I can use here the concept of for loop, and I can define here two for loops, one for the data vector child and say another for say sweet. So, I try to do it here like this. Please try to understand, and then I will try to explain you how it works. I try to take here a for loop, and then inside the parenthesis I try to write down here a counter variable. This counter variable is going to work for the data vector child, right. So, that is going to control the values in the vector which are child 1, child 2 and child 3. And I try to write down here this curly bracket. So, let me call it this curly bracket as say here 1. So, whatever I want to write inside this curly bracket, that will be executed by this for loop which is related to child. Now, within this loop I try to write here one more loop for y in suite. So, I try to give here one more counter variable y which is trying to control the values in the data vector suite, suite 1, suite 2 and suite 3, and whatever I want to do, this is contained in this curly bracket which is here as number 2. I simply want to here say paste the values of child and suite and I want to print them. So, for paste there is a command here paste. So, this is used for pasting the values. Okay, we have not done this command yet, but we are going to do it in the forthcoming lecture, but as the name suggests paste, so it is not very difficult to understand. So, now if you try to see what will happen here, let me try to explain you. So, now the loop will start here and then it will first try to execute the loop for child. So, there are 3 values here, child 1. So, the loop will start, it will try to pick up the value of child 1 and then it will try to come inside the loop for suite and it will try to choose all the values in suite and then it will try to execute the command for printing. Now, after this, when all the values in the suite are consumed, then it will come back once again to the loop for child and it will try to pick up the second value child 2 and it will once again it will try to pick up all the values in the data vector suite and it will try to combine them together. So, let us try to first see what really happens and then I will try to show you what is really happening. So, first of all the control comes here in the x in child and it tries to pick up the first value child 1. Then after this the control comes to the second data vector y in suite and it tries to pick up the first value in the suite which is suite 1 and then it takes here x and y here as say x as child 1 and y here as say suite 1 and it tries to paste and then here print. Now, after this the control will come here to here y, means you have to understand that the if I have here one loop like this and there is another loop here like this, inside this loop say loop 1 and then this is here loop 2. So, first it works from inside, that whatever are the values in the loop 2 first they are executed and then after execution it will come out of the loop and it will try to choose the values in the loop 1. So, now that is what is happening. So, it will try to now select all the values in the data vector suite which are suite 1, suite 2 and suite 3 and it will keep the child 1 as fixed, right. Once this is done, now the control will come to the for loop which is for the child and it will try to pick up the second value child 2 and then it will come to the loop for the y and it will try to pick up the first value in the suite vector suite 1 and then it will try to take the second value suite 2, suite 3 and this child 2 is going to be remain the same and it will try to paste and then print. And the same process will come, that finally it will come to the data vector in x and it will try to choose here the value child 3 and then it will come to the data vector in suite which is here suite 1, then suite 2, then suite 3 and then it will complete the loop like this, right. So, this is how the loop is going to work and you can see here this is here the screenshot of the same operation, right. So, let me try to show you first these examples on the R console, so that you get here more confidence and then I will try to do some other execution. So if you try to see here, I try to choose here this vector here x, which is here like this, and then I try to just copy and paste the command to save my time. So, if you try to see here, it is like this, and if you want to execute it, I try to write down here x count, and then here if I try to write down here x, you can see here this is giving me the value 3, right. So, this is how the program will work without any problem. And similarly, I try to choose here these two data vector, and I also try to choose this command. So, I simply try to paste it here. You can see here that the outcome is coming out to be here like this, right. So, you can see here means executing these commands is not difficult at all, right. So, now let me try to give you here some more options which are useful in using the loop. So, these are some additional commands which are required. So, for example, let me try to first consider the command here break, B-R-E-A-K. This command is used to stop the loop before it has looped through all the items. Suppose you want to stop it somewhere in between of the data vector, then you have to use the command loop, right. So, for example, if you are trying to say here x in C say 3, 7, 9 and 10, and you want to break it here that the program should work only for 3 and 7 and not for 9 and 10. So, here you have to give the command here break. So, how to get it done in the for loop. So, let me try to explain you with this a small example. Suppose I try to take here a vector, data vector drink, and it has 4 values coffee, lemonade, tea and juice, right. And I want to execute this program in such a way that I want to print these values, print coffee, print lemonade, print tea and print juice, but I want to stop it at t, that as soon as the control comes to here t, the function or the program should stop. So, what I try to do here that I try to write down here the for loop as for x in drink. So, x is going to be my controlling variable. This controlling variable means it is going to control the values in the drink vector. So, it will try to this, and then I try to give my commands inside this a curly bracket. Let me try to give it here a number 1, and then I try to write my condition if x is logical equal to t, right. So, you have to give it inside the double quotes. Then you try to execute these commands which are inside this curly bracket number 2. And what is that command? Break. That means break the program, and then whatsoever values you have collected before that, try to print them, right. Okay. So, now if you try to see what will happen, the control will start for x, it will take the first value here coffee and it will print here coffee. Now, the value will come to the next value in the data vector drink, it will try to take here lemonade, and then it will try to print lemonade, and then it will try to come to the third value which is here t, but the command here is that if you if the value in the x is exactly equal to or logically equal to t, then break. So, it will stop here. So, you can see here that this will be the outcome coffee and lemonade, right. So, after this break command there is another command here next, N-E-X-T. So, this command is going to use when we want to skip an iteration without committing the loop, right. For example, in the same example, if I consider suppose I have these 4 values coffee, lemonade, tea and juice, and suppose I want to execute the same program for all the values except for lemonade, right. So, what I will do that I will try to write down the same program, but as we had used here this here break, I will try to use here next. So, what will happen here? The loop will start and it will try to choose all the values in the drink using the variable x, and now you are trying to say that whatever is written inside this curly bracket number 1, that is going to be executed. So, now the commands are, if x is exactly or logically equal to lemonade, then say next, right. So, that is going to happen here. So, now in case if you try to see here, what will happen here? Yeah, first you have to just see that here also is here this curly bracket also. So, yeah, do not forget about this curly bracket, this is here the curly bracket number 2. So, whatever you are writing within this curly bracket, that is going to be there. So, now in case if you try to see here, what will happen? The program will start, it will take the first value in the vector drink coffee, it says no issue and it will print here coffee. Now, after this it will try to jump to the next value lemonade, but it finds here that the program is saying that when x is equal to lemonade, then next do not execute it. So, now it will skip and then it will come to t, it will print here t, and then after that it will choose next value juice and it will try to print here juice. So, that is how actually this works, right. And simply we have here simply I try to suppose repeat this example for a different value. Suppose I want to skip t. So, in the same program I try to write down here, if x is exactly equal to t, then please skip and use the command next for doing it. So, the program will start from a drink, it will take the first value coffee, there is no issue in coffee. So, it will try to print here coffee, then it will come to here lemonade, then it will print here lemonade, there is no issue. After that it will come to here tea. Now, it is saying that okay, if x is equal to t, then next. So, it will skip it and then it will come to juice and it will try to print here juice. So, you can see here this is how this program is going to work, right. So, let me try to show you these things on the R console, and so that you get here more confident. So, I try to copy these values and I try to execute it here, you can see here. So, drink here is like this and I try to use the for loop here, where I am trying to give a break when x is equal to t. So, the first two values coffee and lemonade, which are before t, they are printed here as a coffee and lemonade. And similarly, if you try to see here, I try to take here another command and I want to skip here the lemonade. So, what will happen? The same data vector, but I am trying to use here the command next, and when x is lemonade. So, except lemonade, all the things will be used here. And similarly, in case if you want to skip the t, then you have to just replace x equal to t, and then you can see here this, it will be like here, and this is your here the data vector drink. So, you can see here the t is skipped and all coffee, lemonade and juice, they are printed here. So, now after this we come to an end to this lecture. Well, you can see that in this lecture we have covered only one simple command, but it was long. Why? Because this is the first time you are going to understand the concept of the loop in the R software. So, that is why I had to explain you all the basic functionings, because unless and until you understand how R is going to work for the loops, you cannot use it for your own work. So, that is why I had tried my best to explain you in the quite lucid way in detail. The functioning is very simple, the command is very simple. The only thing is this, depending on the need and requirement, you have to use for loop with different types of option, right, break or next or a command which is a combination of them and so on. So, I would request you, why don't you take some example and try to practice it, try to see what you want to do. So, suppose for example, you try to take more than 2 for loops and try to give some values, 2 or 3 values, and see that whether the outcome is coming, is it matching with what you wanted. Means I have taken in 2 loops all the 3 values. You can take 2 values in the loop number 1 and say 3 values in the loop number 2, and you can means an equal number of values in the 2 loops and try to see how do you get this outcome. You can use here different types of commands like sum, product, etc., which you have done. Well, I have used here the command here paste and print, but anyway you understand them. So, you try to practice it, and I will see you in the next lecture. Till then, goodbye.